Welcome to Channel's Business Club with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London, where global power, policy and markets intersect. Coming up on today's show, Andy Burnham's first week in Downing Street, a new cabinet, a new era, but the same challenges: a fragile economy, a Middle East war and a country exhausted by political instability. What does Britain's 7th Prime Minister in a decade do next? And at the London Stock Exchange this week, the Royal African Society marked 125 years of strengthening Africa and UK relations. I was there with an exclusive from one of the most significant Africa-focused business gatherings in London this year. Then later, from the heart of London, a conversation about culture, creativity and economic development as the King's Foundation, Akoje Gallery and the First Lady of Kwara State come together to ask how culture can build nations. But first, it's been one of the most eventful first weeks any new Prime Minister has had in years. And just meters from where I'm standing, the questions about what kind of Prime Minister Andy Burnham will be are already being asked in the most serious terms. Burnham entered Downing Street on Monday, Britain's 7th Prime Minister in a decade, telling the assembled press that politicians need to do better and that he was acutely conscious of the revolving door he was walking through. His mission, he said, was to regain Britain's stability and deliver a circuit breaker for a system that has taken wrong turns since the 1980s. His cabinet appointments came as a surprise. John Healey, who had resigned as Keir Starmer's Defence Secretary just weeks ago over a funding row with the Treasury, was named Chancellor of the Exchequer, a shock appointment that few had predicted. Shabana Mahmood kept her position as Home Secretary. Ed Miliband was named Foreign Secretary. Wes Streeting became the new Defence Secretary and within days had met Healey to agree a deal bridging the defence funding gap that had prompted Healey's original resignation. Within his first 4 days in office, Burnham announced £340 million to end rough sleeping, £850 million to take VAT off electricity bills, £450 million to cap bus fares and £100 million to cut business rates for pubs and clubs by 20% from April. A total of £1.74 billion in spending commitments. And the rows over how to pay for it all broke out almost immediately. Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, drew a sharp comparison with Liz Truss, saying Burnham risked becoming Labour's answer to the Prime Minister, who triggered a bond market crisis in 2022 with uncosted tax cuts and lasted just 49 days in office. The parallel she drew was direct. 4 years ago, a Prime Minister announced policies without making savings to pay for them, and it didn't end very well. Some analysts are now asking a more provocative question. With £1.74 billion in spending commitments in 4 days and a significant defence spending hole still to be filled, is Andy Burnham preparing the ground for a snap general election, an election before the bills have been paid? The investigation into the murder of Anne Widdecombe continues, and this week her family confirmed that a private funeral service for close friends and family will be held in the coming weeks, with invitations already distributed. A public memorial will follow later this year. Her family said they were very grateful for the wide expression of condolences. Joshua Kerry, 28, from South Yorkshire, appeared in court on Tuesday charged with her murder. Counter-terrorism police remain the lead investigators, following evidence that the attack was targeted and that political ideology may have been a motivating factor. Kerry is not known to the government's Prevent programme. Anne Widdecombe was found dead at her home in Haytor on Dartmoor on the 9th of July. She was 78 years old. She had given an interview defending Nigel Farage just 20 minutes before the time police believe she was attacked. She was the third serving or former MP to be murdered in Britain in a decade, following Joe Cox in 2016 and Sir David Amess in 2021. Prime Minister Andy Burnham has called for a serious review of MP security. That review is underway. At Nigeria House in London this week, a significant meeting took place between two figures at the heart of the UK-Nigeria relationship. Kate Osamo, chair of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association UK and one of the most influential voices on Africa and the Commonwealth in the House of Commons, met Nigeria's High Commissioner to the United Kingdom, Ambassador Ismail Dalhatu. for a courtesy call at the Nigeria High Commission. The discussions covered improved UK-Nigeria diplomatic relations, diaspora engagement, and the full range of matters concerning bilateral diplomacy at this particular moment, a moment shaped by the momentum of President Tinubu's historic state visit earlier this year, a new UK-Nigeria migration agreement, and the arrival of a new British Prime Minister in Downing Street. Ambassador Dalhatu arrived in London recently to take up his post as the head of Nigeria's flagship diplomatic mission, the oldest and largest Nigerian High Commission in the world. His priorities include reversing the decline in British investment into Nigeria, building a database of Nigerians living in the UK, and strengthening the relationship between the two countries' private sectors. On Wednesday, the Royal African Society marked its 125th anniversary with a landmark flagship business event at the London Stock Exchange, one of the world's most important financial institutions and a venue that speaks directly to the ambition at the heart of this gathering. Founded in 1901, the Royal African Society is the only UK-based non-governmental organisation with a royal charter, the highest badge of trust, authority and enduring public service dedicated to increasing knowledge about Africa. Its royal patron is His Royal Highness Prince William. Over 125 years, it has established itself as a trusted and neutral convening authority at the intersection of business, policy, academia and the arts, playing a pivotal role in informing UK policy, shaping investment dialogue and strengthening UK-Africa relations. This year's event, themed 125 years of celebrating African and British businesses, brought together global business executives, institutional investors and diaspora business leaders for a full day of high-level discussion on capital mobilisation, cross-border investment and Africa's integration into global financial markets. The keynote address was delivered by the Prime Minister of St Kitts and Nevis, the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew.
The 125th anniversary or birthday is something that none of us humans today will ever get to. So absolutely honoured to chair the Royal African Society at a time when it's celebrating 125 years of being in existence. But also more important is that some of the issues that we're dealing with today are issues that Mary Kingsley, who has always been a champion of Africa, was talking about in the late 1800s. And this organization was founded in her memory by people from Africa, from the UK, who understood what Africa meant to the rest of the world, the wealth of Africa. And so they wanted to learn more about Africa, they wanted to listen and hear from African people. And that has always been in the DNA of this organization since its founding in 1901. I'm absolutely delighted that we can celebrate 125 years of a UK-Africa partnership that has been growing from strength to strength. So the Royal African Society is a membership organization, individual members, corporate members, so that makes it unique. But it's also unique because it offers its members a variety of opportunities in academia, in culture, in policy, in business, and it of course makes sure that it's building the bridges between Africa and the UK.
From the aspirations of Mary Kingsley, the founder, was to be a platform to promote mutual respect, commerce, not aid. Cooperation and collaboration with Africa that understands that Africa has its culture, has its own way of governance, and that Africa can thrive on commerce, fair commerce with Britain. That's what it thrived on. Now, the stock exchange today is a good place to begin the remembrance of those founding aspirations, because it provides a platform for sharing opportunities. It provides a platform for transparent discovery of prizes. is this transparency, this fairness in economic relations that Mary Kingsley aspired to. And stock exchange is a good place institutionally to represent that. In today's world, fragmentation, uncertainty, economic entropy as a result of geopolitical tensions and wars, technological evolution, climate pressures. This institution, the stock exchange, which is built on the philosophy of ordered volatility, stands in stark contrast to the unpredictability of the world that we are witnessing today, the uncertainties that are arising from the geopolitical situation that is now defining relations in the world.
I've come to recognize more than anything else when I heard the word governance mentioned, that if the political climate is not right, it can disrupt all that you are planning here this afternoon. And so it dawned on me even more acutely that I must be careful with the policies that I implement. Recently, I had the opportunity of bringing a number of young people in my country, where I've launched a program called Aspire. I will describe it and it would sound like something I've heard before, but I can tell you it was the first one in the Western Hemisphere. For every child between the ages of 5 and 18, we have given them an initial grant of $1,000. And then of that, each child will have $500 to start a savings, and then the other $500 they will invest in the stock market or bonds. And then in addition to that, all of the children have to have financial literacy as part of their curricula in school.
You know, it's such a historic moment that I'm so proud of it. First of all, yes, 125 years of being the bridge between the United Kingdom and Africa. You don't get to be 125 years twice. Now, the Royal African Society, we sit in a very privileged position where we have 4 different pillars: business, arts and culture, policy and academics. Now, this was a strong expression of our business pillar. We couldn't think of a more iconic address than the London Stock Exchange. And essentially, we're bringing captains of industry, regulators, dignitaries in the public sector, because we all work together, diplomats, to ask ourselves, what is the future we see for Africa? Broadly and then in industry-specific terms, because enough of the talk, is time for action. As we have those industry conversations, each team goes away with things that we need to begin to do differently. You know, we had at the beginning of the day a poet speak to us, you know, and she said, what will you leave behind for your children? What is the legacy of the next 125 years? It's up to us to build it now, for Africans, by Africans, and putting Africa where it should be in the global marketplace. Our very next big event is the 125th edition of Film Africa, which takes place from the 23rd of October to the 1st of November. And the portal is out, it's open. Filmmakers across the continent, put in your submissions. Last year we had 50 films from 22 African countries. We have 54, and we really would like to see a film at least from every country. And beyond the films, the specific areas we're going to be looking at: the role of women in the movie industry. How do we raise sustainable finance for the movie industry? And how do we equip our youth to such that they can take charge of this? The future belongs to them. Africa is a youthful continent, but we need to put them with the resources that they require.
Still to come on Channel's Business Global, more from the Royal African Society's landmark gathering at the London Stock Exchange and how culture is being used as a driver of economic development. The King's Foundation, Akoje Gallery and the First Lady of Kwara State in conversation. All of this after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London, where global power, policy and markets intersect. We return now to the London Stock Exchange and the Royal African Society's 125th anniversary, a gathering that brought together some of the most influential voices in African and British business, investment and diplomacy.
I want us to focus on the future that we have to build. And I think there's a platform here for us to talk about the key challenges we have and to agree a path on how we can intentionally build a future for Africans to have dignity and prosperity. We have to change the way our economies are structured. And we need to do that by intentionally planning for prosperity. Prosperity is achieved by a coordination of resource, capital, and people, talent especially, and ensuring that we have a system whereby we can align demand for our resources with the infrastructure required to process it and the markets that will consume it. I maintain that Africa is the market, not just for the future, the market now and well into the future. We're the fastest urbanizing region in the world. All the mega trends are converging in Africa, so we have to seize the moment and build our future now. That's why we're here to celebrate and congratulate them for what they've achieved. But what is important is what we're going to do together going forward. And like I mentioned, I would like us to have proper conversations on how we can reduce Africa's cost of capital. And they're in a good position to do that.
The society used to be focused on extracting resources out of Africa, exporting them into Europe, primarily the United Kingdom. And I think that the focus and the ethos has moved around, and this time around there's a focus on seeking primary development in Africa, using global capital towards doing that, merging the ideas regarding technology, cooperation, and effectively changing our ethos from one of growth to one of development in the continent. And it resonates with us, and we're very keen to continue to develop the ideas that are being discussed here. If you look at the recent successes of our multilateral development institutions on the continent, and with that I mean the African Export-Import Bank, the African Finance Corporation, AFC, the ADB, you will see that they played such a pivotal role in being able to build large institutions and support big industrial development. And I think the focus right now has to be towards securing global capital to support their balance sheets, using them as a means of driving large-scale economic growth on the continent, and then effectively also helping us mobilize all the capital, the fragmented capital in Africa, to put that together, reduce our overall cost of borrowing. And certain initiatives are being discussed around the conference, and we're going to be able to use the society as a magnet towards driving these initiatives.
It is a golden opportunity that we have gotten when we reflect where we are coming from in the last 125 years and where we are heading to. For Africa have gotten a unique opportunity for us to demonstrate to the world that we are not just here just to participate in the global financial market, but we are here in future to shape the future of the global financial market. For us in Nigeria, a lot of things have already happened, which have demonstrated, which I believe is a platform that we are using here based on the Royal African Society's 125 years to showcase what our country have done in the last 3 years. The reforms of the government, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has gone a long way in shaping our economy, in opening the country, in making sure that at the end of the day, even though the reforms are painful, but they have really worked in terms of the effects, in terms of the subsidy removal, and so many other reforms that this new government have brought. And we are not surprised, because the president is not only a politician, but he's a businessman. And that has been demonstrated. That's why Nigeria today, the investors' confidence is back. You can see the liquidity that is coming in. You can see the foreign participation into that. It's not just coming by accident. It's a deliberate attempt by the government, which for us at the Nigerian Stock Exchange key in from day one. That's why today our market capitalizations have not only doubled, but have tripled. from less than 50 trillion to over 150 trillion.
And finally, a conversation that reframes how we think about culture entirely. At the Garrison Chapel, the London home of the King's Foundation, a private thought leadership gathering brought together leaders from the UK arts sector and Nigeria to explore one of the most important questions facing both economies. Not what culture produces, but what culture builds. The panel, titled Building Cultural Capital, explored how countries can invest in their creative economies, how public-private partnerships in culture can drive sustainable development, and how international collaboration between the UK and Africa can create the institutional frameworks that allow artists, designers, and creative entrepreneurs to thrive. The discussion was hosted by Okoje Gallery, founded by England Rugby International Maro Itoje and gallery director Khalil Akar, to promote artists from Africa, the Caribbean and the diaspora, in partnership with the King's Foundation and Frieze Connect, the professional membership network of one of the world's leading contemporary art organisations.
We're at the Garrison Chapel, which is run by the King's Foundation, and this is our first of a series of panel discussions, and the theme of today is on building cultural capital. We have 3 wonderful panelists representing the King's Foundation, Frieze Connect. It's such a diverse term, to be honest, and this is what we're here to discuss today. So we're going to be focusing on partnerships, how partnerships can help basically as a country. So you have different levels. You have from an individual, you have statewide, and then you have international wise. And then it's literally how everything can impact one another, how they can all fit in together to literally leave a legacy behind. You had so many people from the from Nigeria itself come here, and they met their counterparts. So that, again, so many things to discuss, so many ways. And for us in the cultural sector, there is a lot of exchange of ideas, works that we can do with each other, which funnily enough, we're going to be discussing as well at the panel discussion today. And with the King's Foundation, so we have a beautiful artist in residence program at Dumfries House in Scotland, and so we house up to 8 artists per year, and so it's an open call for applicants, so that's something, please do keep an eye out for it. And then now we're starting panel discussions with them at Garrison Chapel.
What we focus on, for example, at Frieze is, how do we bring in a new generation of collectors? But collecting itself isn't, it's an outcome. You collect art. But really, cultural capital is what gives depth and meaning and purpose to collecting. So it's the conversations, it's the relationships, it's the dissemination of ideas and dialogues. That's what cultural capital is. The idea that there's sort of one hub or several known hubs for culture, and it sort of trickles down from these very specific places is a thing of the past. I think now there are places, Nigeria, the Middle East, that have such amazing artistic and creative communities, and I think places in London, and institutions in London are increasingly aware of the richness of all of these cultures. So there are galleries, Frieze itself, all the galleries that we support and represent from Africa, from the Middle East and the wider diaspora. You sort of go to the fairs and you see the diversity there.
They're trying to promote artists from Nigeria. If you know, they had some artwork in the Tatler magazine, and then they have the Okoje residency up in Scotland where they work with the King's Foundation. So they've asked me to support, I've been supporting the gallery for some time now, and it was important for me to be here so that we can showcase what we're doing for Nigerian artists, for the gallery, making sure that we continue to put Nigerian artists on the map. We're very proud of what they've done. In particular for me is to see how we can use this to scale up skills acquisition programs, train more creatives, train more artists, and so many other things that we're doing. And then this venue, like you said, it's really, really pretty. I came here once and I saw an art exhibition. You know, art is so important and Nigerians are so creative. So we have a lot of budding talent, a lot of budding artists. And I decided I was going to come back to join them for this today. Honestly, they love our culture everywhere. You know, we wear the head ties and, you know, for me in particular, we showcase Ashoke fabric. So I once had something with the government whereby they promoted the Ashoke that we do in Kwara State, and they worked on it with the development agency here, and we promoted that. And like I said, we're promoting Nigerian artists now.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today, but as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.